Origin. Severus Snape was born on January the 9th, 1960, in a grim industrial town called Spinner's End. Unlike Harry Potter, who found love in his mother's sacrifice, Snape grew up in a household where love was scarce. His father, Tobias Snape, was a muggle, known for being harsh and neglectful, while his mother, Eileen Prince, was a witch from a once-respected magical family that had fallen on hard times. Their marriage was turbulent, often filled with shouting and bitterness, and young Severus was caught in the middle of it all. This bleak environment left its mark on him. He was a child who rarely knew kindness, and that shaped the reserved, guarded personality he carried into adulthood. But despite the unhappiness at home, there was one constant in his life that gave him hope: magic. Severus was naturally gifted, far beyond his years, and he clung to this talent as a way to escape the reality of his broken home. His passion for spells, potions, and the darker aspects of magic started early, and it became the one thing that made him feel powerful in a world where he otherwise felt powerless. And while his home life left him isolated, fate soon brought someone into his world who would change his life forever. Friendship with Lily Evans. It was in the same neighborhood that Severus first encountered Lily Evans. She was everything his life wasn't: bright, cheerful, and kind. Lily had just begun to discover her own magical abilities, and Snape was the one who helped her understand what she was. He explained the wizarding world to her, showing her that she was more than just a girl from Cokeworth. She was destined for something bigger. For Severus, Lily became more than just a friend. She was the light in his otherwise dark world, the one person who saw past his ragged clothes and gloomy demeanor. Their bond was strong in those early years, built on magic and trust. Snape confided in her in ways he never could with anyone else, and Lily, in turn, defended him when others dismissed or mocked him. But even in this friendship, you can already see the seeds of what would later become tragedy. Snape's admiration for Lily often bordered on worship, and while she cared about him deeply, their paths were destined to split. She represented acceptance and kindness, while Snape was already drawn to the allure of darker magic. At this stage, though, all that mattered was that he wasn't alone anymore. For a boy who had grown up surrounded by neglect, Lily Evans was proof that someone could see the good in him. And it was with Lily by his side that Severus stepped into the next chapter of his life: Hogwarts. Hogwarts experience. In 1971, Severus Snape boarded the train to Hogwarts for the very first time. For him, this wasn't just a new school, it was an escape. At Hogwarts, he wasn't the poor boy from Spinner's End anymore. He was a wizard in a world where skill mattered more than appearances. From the moment the Sorting Hat placed him in Slytherin House, his identity as a Slytherin would shape his friendships, his enemies, and ultimately his future. Snape quickly revealed himself to be an exceptional student. His talent for potions was unmatched, and his hunger for knowledge pushed him beyond the standard curriculum. He wasn't satisfied with simply learning spells. He was creating them, experimenting with incantations and scribbling improvements into the margins of his textbooks. His raw brilliance made him stand out, but it didn't win him friends in the wider school. His appearance, his reserved personality, and his Slytherin ties made him an easy target for ridicule. The one bright spot in these years was Lily Evans. Though sorted into Gryffindor, she remained his closest friend. They studied together, shared secrets, and leaned on each other as the wizarding world revealed its complexities. But there was always tension. Lily made friends with people Snape despised, namely James Potter and Sirius Black, while Snape gravitated toward darker students who would one day become Death Eaters. It was a friendship constantly tested, pulled in opposite directions by the choices each of them made. Still, for a time, Lily's friendship kept him tethered to something good. She reminded him there was more to life than bitterness, more than power and ambition. But Hogwarts was also the place where Snape's insecurities and anger began to harden into something darker, and much of that came from the constant torment he endured at the hands of his rivals. Bullying and rivalry. For all his talent, Severus Snape couldn't escape one thing: bullying. James Potter and Sirius Black, two of Gryffindor's golden boys, took particular delight in targeting him. They mocked his greasy hair, his shabby robes, and his awkwardness. But their pranks went far beyond words. They hexed him, humiliated him in front of crowds, and treated him as if he were less than human. This wasn't just harmless schoolyard teasing. To Snape, who already carried the weight of a loveless home and deep insecurities, it was relentless torment. Every public humiliation chipped away at him, feeding his resentment and anger. And worst of all, it wasn't just James. It was James with Lily watching. Time and again, Snape would find himself humiliated in front of the one person whose opinion mattered most to him. The rivalry with James Potter cut deeper than anything else. James wasn't just a bully, he was confident, talented and popular, the very thing Snape could never be. And as the years went on, James's growing closeness to Lily turned the rivalry into something far more personal. Snape couldn't stand that the girl he loved saw something in the boy who tormented him. This tension reached its peak in their 5th year during the infamous incident by the lake. After being hexed by James in front of a crowd of students, Snape, in a fit of rage, called Lily a mudblood. It was a single word, but it carried enough venom to shatter their friendship forever. For Lily, it was a line she couldn't forgive. For Snape, it was a moment of regret that would haunt him for the rest of his life. From then on, the divide was permanent. James and Sirius had solidified themselves as his enemies, and Lily, the one person who had ever cared for him, had walked away. Snape was now more alone than ever, and it was in this loneliness and anger that he began to make the choices that would lead him down a much darker path. Dark choices and Death Eater association. With Lily gone and the pain of humiliation fresh in his memory, Snape began to lean harder into the one group that accepted him. The Slytherins, who were obsessed with the dark arts. These students admired his brilliance and shared his fascination with powerful, forbidden magic. For a boy who had always felt powerless, the allure of control and recognition was intoxicating. As the years passed, Voldemort's influence spread through the wizarding world, and Snape was drawn deeper into the Dark Lord's ideology. He admired Voldemort's knowledge, respected his power, and saw in him a figure who rewarded ambition and talent. By the time Snape left Hogwarts, he had pledged himself as a Death Eater, stepping into a life that promised him strength and belonging, but also demanded loyalty to a cause built on fear and blood purity. But fate has a way of twisting even the strongest convictions. While serving Voldemort, Snape overheard part of a prophecy spoken by Professor Trelawney, words that foretold a child who would have the power to defeat the Dark Lord. Eager to prove his value, Snape carried this information to Voldemort without realizing what it meant. The prophecy pointed to Harry Potter, the son of James and Lily. Voldemort decided to strike before the child could grow strong, setting his sights on the Potters. And in that moment, Snape's world came crashing down. He had inadvertently delivered Lily, the love of his life, into Voldemort's hands. Love and sacrifice. Snape's love for Lily had always been the one pure, unwavering truth in his life. And now, realizing that she was marked for death because of his actions, he did something he had never done before. He begged. Snape went to Voldemort himself, pleading with him to spare Lily's life, offering anything in return. But Voldemort was not a man of mercy, and Snape's request fell on deaf ears. Desperate, Snape turned to the one person who might help, Albus Dumbledore. He revealed what he had done, confessed the prophecy he had shared, and begged Dumbledore to protect Lily. For all his arrogance and cruelty, Snape was stripped bare in that moment, consumed only by the thought of losing her. But even Dumbledore couldn't prevent the tragedy. In 1981, Voldemort descended on Godric's Hollow. James Potter was killed first, trying to protect his family. Lily was given the chance to step aside, but she refused. Her sacrifice shielded Harry, and Voldemort's curse rebounded, destroying his body. For the wizarding world, it was a victory. For Severus Snape, it was devastation. Lily was gone, and nothing he could do would bring her back. The guilt of knowing his actions had led Voldemort to her would haunt him forever. Yet in his grief, he made a vow that would define the rest of his life. He swore to Dumbledore that he would protect Lily's son, Harry, even if it meant risking his own life. This wasn't about redeeming himself in the eyes of others. Snape didn't care what people thought of him. This was about Lily, about honouring her memory in the only way he could. From that day forward, everything Snape did was shaped by that love and that loss. And with that vow, Severus Snape began his most dangerous and complicated role, living a double life between two worlds that were both ready to destroy him. Double agent role. After Lily's death, Snape was a man consumed by grief but bound by a vow. He had pledged himself to Dumbledore, promising to protect Harry Potter even though the boy was also a living reminder of everything he had lost. Every time Snape looked at Harry, he saw James Potter's face, the arrogant boy who had tormented him. But behind those glasses were Lily's eyes, and that was enough to hold Snape to his word. This is where Snape's story becomes almost Shakespearean. By day, he lived as the cold, sneering potions master of Hogwarts, a teacher despised by most of his students and feared by nearly all. But beneath that exterior, he was playing the most dangerous role in the wizarding world, a double agent. To Voldemort, Snape was a loyal follower who had returned to his side after his resurrection. To Dumbledore, Snape was the most vital spy in the fight against the Dark Lord. Walking this line required flawless deception. One slip, one wrong word, and Voldemort's suspicion could mean his death. Yet Snape pulled it off with an icy precision that fooled almost everyone, including the audience. Even when Harry and the others saw Snape's cruelty as nothing more than spite, every harsh word and calculated act had purpose. Snape worked tirelessly in the shadows, feeding Voldemort carefully chosen information while secretly undermining him. He kept his true allegiance hidden so well that only Dumbledore fully understood the depth of his sacrifice. And even then, Dumbledore asked more of him than anyone could have imagined. When Dumbledore was cursed by the ring containing Voldemort's Horcrux, it was Snape, not anyone else, who tried to contain the damage. When the headmaster's death became inevitable, Dumbledore turned to Snape once again. He asked him to do the unthinkable, to be the one to end his life when the moment came. For Snape, it was yet another burden, but one he carried in silence. Because for him, the vow he had made all those years ago to protect Lily's son and aid in Voldemort's downfall mattered more than how anyone else would ever see him. Final sacrifice and legacy. The end of Snape's journey came during the Battle of Hogwarts in 1998. As Voldemort sought complete control, he became convinced that Snape was the master of the Elder Wand. Believing he had to kill him to claim its power, Voldemort ordered Nagini to strike. In that brutal moment, Snape's years of deception, sacrifice, and silent suffering reached their tragic conclusion. But even in death, Snape thought not of himself. With his final breaths, he called Harry close and gave him a gift: his memories. It was only then, as Harry watched the truth unfold in the pensive, that the layers of Snape's life were finally revealed. His childhood, his love for Lily, his regret, his promises, and his tireless devotion to protecting Harry. All of it came to light. For Harry, the revelation was staggering. The man he had despised for years, the teacher who had mocked him, belittled him, and seemed to despise his very existence, had in fact been his greatest protector all along. And when Harry later named his son Albus Severus Potter, he honoured that truth, calling Snape one of the bravest men he had ever known. Snape's legacy is complicated, and that's what makes it so powerful. He was a bully, a man who made cruel choices, and someone who walked too close to darkness. But he was also a protector, a double agent who risked everything. And above all, a man defined by his ability to love, even when that love was painful and unreturned. In the end, Severus Snape's life was not one of glory, but of sacrifice. And though the world may always debate whether he was a villain or hero, one thing remains clear. Without him, Voldemort would never have fallen.